Literacy is defined as being able to read and write, or to having knowledge about a specific subject. When you can read, this is an example of literacy. When you are familiar with math, this is an example of literacy in mathematics. So our focus, of course, will be on reading and writing. Next slide. What we're going to do next is when we think about creating our literacy centers on site at the campsite. And also, I'd like for you to keep in the back of your mind for those campers who may be either unable or unwilling to join you on site. I know there's a 9-to-1 ratio, to also encourage them to create a literacy space. And in order to do that, I'd like for us to do a little sort of internal creating by looking at a Kids Smart Module Safe Studio. And we like to define a safe studio as an environment or a setting that supports and encourages creativity. So in your classroom, we like for you to think of your classroom or your campsite as sort of a studio, an environment that supports creativity. And here are some of the things that might go into you creating and operating, employing a safe studio. Next slide. Safe studio answers these 4 questions. There's a lot more to it, but for today, we're going to look at 4 basic questions in creating a safe studio. Thinking about yourself as an educator, as an instructor, director, we're going to answer these questions. Where are you most creative? What are the qualities of that space? How does this translate to the classroom? And what tools do you use to ensure a safe studio? So we'll break that down. Next slide, Jillian, please. On your notebook, on your paper, since we are encouraging, of course, our students and our campers to read and to write and to explore and all of the creativity that's happening in their minds, think about ourselves. Write down 2 ideas. Where are you most creative? And once again, I'll give you a minute to answer each question. And if a few people can place their answers in the chat, we'll share those. And we have 3 additional questions, so you don't have to share for each question, but we want to make sure we have participants to answer. So in about 30 seconds or so, we'll share, where are you most? Okay, we have some responses here. So we have Samantha saying outdoors with music, Sam, Jeremy, in my classroom and on my computer. Jillian, outdoors near water and trees, making music with friends. Amanisha is most creative around other people who are creating. And as we go through this brief process with the Safe Studio, part of the objective is to connect where you are most creative to how that can translate into creating a center in the classroom and encouraging the campers to be creative as well. So around other people, near water, making music. Also, when I'm with my mom, her mind is always thinking about art, fun, and play. That's from Jillian. Thank you. All right, our next slide. What are the qualities of that space? And of course, we're talking about literacy centers, creating literacy space. Looking at your notes based on where you are most creative, what are some of the qualities of that space you feel that sort of lend itself to you being creative? We'll take a minute to answer, to think about that, please. What are the qualities of that creative space? Okay, qualities of that creative space. We have some participants. Haley, it's safe and judgment-free. Think about that as you're creating your literacy center. The space is quiet and peaceful. That's from Avery Matthews. Samantha King, open, free, quiet. Jeremy Terry, safe, comfortable. Tranquil, comfortable, easy, safety, silliness, kind space, silliness. Let's see, we have some more messages here. Outdoors, listening to birds and surrounding activities. Miss Perry, wonderful. So as you're thinking about creating that literacy center, that space, think about those qualities and qualities that resonate with you in terms of being creative. Angela, of course, said simple, uncluttered, not rushed. Some are small, closed spaces, okay? Others are open. How does this translate to the classroom? This is an actual picture from one of our sites from last year. This is First Pilgrims Baptist, a visit that I sat in on there. So the question is thinking about where you're most creative, the qualities of that creative space. How does this translate to the classroom? How does those qualities, whether it's safe or if it's an outdoor space, if it's a non-cluttered space, how might those qualities translate to the classroom? And of course, considering the 9-to-1 ratio, campers not sharing materials. Thank you, Jeremy, Ramanisha. Let's see our responses here. Freedom for everyone to share and be who they are. That was from Jeremy. Ramisha said creating space for independent reading. Myhan, an area to put your ideas down, i.e. whiteboard, okay. Jillian, promoting inclusivity, paying attention to who is not sharing, speaking, and making space for them and assuring them it's a safe place to do so. Absolutely. And so we'll go to our next slide. We have another response from, let's see, we have time, let's share here. Ms. Perry wrote, each camper would be given an opportunity to express their experience. Thank you, Ms. Perry, how are you? Avery Matthews, have a quiet, peaceful, and comfortable space gives campers the opportunity to have quiet space to use their imaginations. Now, final question for the Safe Studio idea. What tools might you use to ensure a safe studio? Angela wrote, when I think of a physical space, I think of trying, let's see, it went away here. I think of trying to make space that's in a corner, off to the side, somewhere that gives opportunity for quiet, solitude, reflection, small group conversation. Thank you. So what tools do you use to ensure the safe studio? We've sort of already begun to answer that. So what are some of the tools that you might use to make sure this space is creative, that it's safe? We'll take a minute to do that and then we'll share. Okay. Structure, rules, roles, immunities. Samantha, that was from Jeremy, having resources at the ready. Thank you, Sam. I can always count on you to include some information there. Aminisha, if they need a quiet, comfortable place, maybe some makeshift walls with pillows or crates. Absolutely. Ramisha, clear expectations. Absolutely. Ms. Perry, each camper having their individual dry erase board. So those are some of the tools our participants are sharing with the community in terms of ensuring a safe studio. What we have next slide, are some ideas. And Jillian also said establishing working agreements like one mic, one person speaks at a time to show respect for the speaker, or Elmo, everybody let's move on. all of those things. And here are some ideas in terms of the Safe Studio module. And all of these ideas were, in fact, shared. Being aware of space, how are students seated, rows, quads, tables? Can desks and chairs be rearranged? Is there a place to store materials? Of course, we're in the process of creating these alternative spaces because of the public health crisis. How can you utilize Smartboard came up, absolutely, dry erase boards, chart paper to impact student learning, and how's the lighting? So when we think about the experience of camp, of course, we're encouraging and understandably that it's not school, but it is an environment, it's a setting. How would you like your participants, the campers, to feel when they enter the environment? Are you framing it like this is a learning studio? Do they sign in? And of course, from that whole environment, you can create your individual literacy center and or space. Next slide. Literacy centers and spaces. Of course, these are images of literacy centers that were created last year at some of the first pilgrims. There are photographs from. Also, there are some images from Berman Nord as we go along. Yes, so what is a literacy center? Of course, it's self-explanatory, but here's some experts and their definitions of what it might be for those who might need a bit of clarity. A small area within the classroom where students work alone or together to explore literacy activities independently, while the teacher, instructor, director, whatever we might be calling it this summer, provides small group guided reading instructions. Here's another offering, a place or activity that invites students to practice and apply strategies that have been taught and modeled and shared in guided reading lessons. Next, an area of the classroom where children read or write independently during the 15 or 20 minutes the teacher is working with small groups for guided reading or assisted reading. And finally, an area for the display, storage, and use of literacy materials. Next slide. So how do we get started? If we could just take a look. This was from last year's Literacy Centers workshop. It's a management chart, and it's just giving different ideas of how things might be managed in the classroom. As you can see there, there's a writing center, reading box, technology, all of these different options in terms of supporting and encouraging literacy. Of course, you can just decide which one or two would be most applicable for your campers. This is just giving you an idea of how that might, in fact, be managed. Next slide. What is the purpose? Why are we doing this? What's it all about? The purpose of creating literacy centers and spaces. What is the purpose of creating literacy centers and spaces? Anyone? Why have this? Okay, here we go. I can share some of these responses. Jillian said, to inspire curiosity. Jamil, a center space that is important. China, to give students opportunity to engage wholly in the learning process without distraction. Avery, to give campers a space where they know this is the space for literacy and create an environment specifically for them to enjoy all things literacy. Sam, it enables children to have a choice. Choice is important. And self-select what will grab and hold their interest. Mary Webb, thank you, Mary, to coach kids as to what literacy looks like. Rosalind, to expose students to other experiences and ideas. And Angela, give space and time for discovery, self-directed learning. Having a designated space gives literacy the priority and message of importance that it deserves. Jeremy, allowing students to work at their own pace while allowing them to do something of their choosing. There we have the cave Fennelly and everything. That was set up at the, I think it's Jacqueline Perry, that was at the Nord, I believe, upstairs, Berman. So thank you very much for that and that image. Next slide. There we go, I see that. How can I adapt spaces, whether it's a physical space, a digital space, them at home, that support literacy? Now, this will be our first breakout group. You're going to break out into groups and you're going to answer the question. If you want to jot it down, I don't know if the screen will still be available, but how can you adapt the space, whether it's a physical space, there'll be some digital learning, of course, and also home and encouraging the campers to have it at home. I'll read one last response from the chat and then Jillian will put us in our breakout groups. Ms. Perry said to allow campers freedom to express themselves. So for now, we'll have a breakout group. The breakout group will last for only 10 minutes. In your breakout group, I'd like for you to share ideas with the other participants on how you might adapt your space. If someone wants to talk about a physical space, digital space, home, just make sure each area is addressed. And if you could select one spokesperson from your breakout group to share with the whole group.
I'll go first. So in our group, in group 2, we talked about creating spaces of comfort. And so a lot of focusing on the size of our literacy area, and for like smaller literacy centers, creating individualized like boxes or containers with everything the campers may need. Hold on, mommy's talking. Everything the campers may need, from pencils to crayons, and having them give the opportunity to choose a few books that they may be interested in, so that eliminates them having to do so much moving. And when literacy time comes, they can just pull out their container and the book that they're interested in reading and read it. We also talked about some virtual aspects. And so like for us in particular, my campus, Jaya, when we send home our art supplies, a box of art supplies for the summer, we're sending home books so that they can be facilitating them on their own and reading when they're ready. And then we've also signed up for a membership for each camper with a program called Adaptive Minds, where they can experience literacy through fun games. So those are some of the things we talked about in our group.
Fantastic. Thank you, Avery, and your group for sharing. Spokesperson for the next group. I think I might know who that is, Haley.
Hi, guys. So I had a really nice time in our little breakout group. Everyone had some awesome ideas, and the word that really stuck out for all 3 aspects of the question was intentional. So just being really intentional with knowing that we have to think about small group sizes, online learning, distance learning. We have to be more intentional than we ever have. So for this physical space, I like the idea of the chart that you showed with the different smaller guided reading areas, and that offers some choice to students, and I think that could really lend itself to creativity in its own special way. So maybe smaller areas in the classroom, whereas past summers we might have done one guided reading area. For the digital aspect, our group kind of came up with that since students are home, the schedule is the space that they're working with, kinda. I thought that was a really neat idea, and that mapping out a time for literacy in the camper's day, even if you're not physically with them, is really important, and stressing that to the students and just showing them why it's important to schedule your day with literacy. And then at home, just how we are doing a Zoom call for adults, I think it could be really important to do like a Zoom call with students to teach them how to create their own literacy area in their homes. You can say, find your favorite stuffed animal, make sure you have lots of light. If just creating a little safe space for them to be creative and have lots of access to print, or if you can just offer different ideas like you're offering to us right now.
Fantastic. So one of the takeaways, sort of like time and space merging together there. The schedule is the space. And I really appreciate some of the ideas that we can utilize from the Safe Studio, because we went through the process of where we creative, we can ask them and transfer some, where might they be creative? That'll be your space. Is it on the stoop? Is it behind the house? Is it on the porch? Is it near a closet? Some areas, so that we can be, as the other group said, intentional and really being specific. Anyone else like to add anything from your group that was said that sort of resonated with you, stands out in terms of adapting space?
Okay, so one or some of the things that we talked about was making sure that, or affording kids the opportunity to have a basket to have all of their supplies in, whether that be crayons, their books, puzzles, type word games. I do remember that. Shanita, what else did we come up with?
Also, depending on, well, I can't remember. I know I said the baskets, but depending on the logistics of the classroom, maybe have the students, so they won't have to be sitting at a table all day with the suggestion of the yoga mats, and also with the younger, even the older campers, maybe to get them more involved, having them do some type of creation with their literacy center, so they won't just have to sit and listen. They can do some type of creation to have their own supplies there for their favorite, part of the story, or what they like the most in the story of the week. And it was also stated that it doesn't necessarily have to be quote unquote books. It could be puzzles, spelling, different types of those activities. I know my kindergarten students like stampers, so making, activities in their space so that it could be their space, I guess you would say.
Okay, thank you very much. I see our time is ticking here. I just want to read some of the responses in the chat. Samantha King said, kids can make their favorite stuffed animal the librarian, and if they have some time to share on a Zoom call, they can let everyone know the librarian's pick for the week and share the book that they're reading. Of course, Jillian thought that was such a cute idea. Angela said, I remember a favorite reading spot for A's and aces in the past was inside a cabinet. Kids took turns using that space to literally curl up with a good book. An example like that could help students find unusual spaces in their own homes. Very specific and concrete. Thank you, Angela. And Jillian suggested, I remember a teacher painted a cardboard box that looked like a rocket and put pillows inside and books. Excellent. The beautiful thing about being a facilitator in this type of work is I don't have to have any of the answers. The participants have them. I just need to sort of glean them out. But digital adaptations, we have a timer to set a routine, encourage the students to have noise canceling headphones so they can focus. Webcams interact with their teachers if they don't have it, or the camp can provide that for groups of students they can share with on-site and at home. A desk to keep their supplies organized, a strong router to boost their signals, and a notebook with pencil and paper to take notes. All of those things are important and elementary. Next slide, Jillian. Helping keeping kids accountable. We talked a little bit about that because of time. Next slide. Real sharing. It's gonna come up, keep going. Personal pride. purposeful recording, good-natured self-selected competition, always good for the classroom, planning, of course, and choice. As Amanisha was saying, what would they like to read? How would they like to read? Is it just reading? Is it writing? Is it oral? Having them have a choice in terms of the type of literacy activities they'd like to participate in for this summer. Remember, it's not school, but it is educational. So this part we sort of already talked about, and it was identifying elements that really make literary centers appealing to children. We don't have to go into our second breakout group for that because of time, but we talked about stuffed animals, we talked about pillows, we talked about colors, we talked about what's the lighting, all of these considerations that really make the center appealing. Will music be playing? Is music available? Headphones, all of those items to really specifically and deliberately think about how can I make this center or this space appealing for the campers. Next slide. And here are some ideas for that. Of course, getting to know your campers, establishing guidelines for interaction early and often, provide choices, we talked about that, encourage collaboration, and as the instructor, engage in the collaboration as well. I do understand that they talked a lot about campers not sharing supplies. So at the top, it talks about Ziploc bags, labeling, where they can clip and place their items so that that's not shared. Your convenience, you will be able to look back over this PowerPoint and these ideas. Next slide. So we're back. Our learning goal. I understand how to create literacy centers, spaces that support summer reading and writing. Of course, we understand how to create literacy centers and spaces, and we've shared ideas. We don't have to have all the answers, where other people brought in their ideas that sort of resonated with us. And so that'll lead to the next slide, Jillian. Q&A, questions, answers. Any questions or comments about creating the literacy centers in this new public health environment, 9-to-1 ratio, not sharing materials, not having guests on site, a lot of things being online. Any question come to your mind about literacy centers, the purpose, and what they're about?
Zeb, can I make an observation I've had while we've been talking?
Yes.
The observation is really coming from my interaction with my 6, almost 7-year-old at home and encouraging reading. And also the fact that, whether it's virtual space or not, kids needing connection and kids needing interaction. So yes, creating space for reading, creating space for engaging with literacy. One thing I'm finding really important for my child is that I'm engaging with her, or those times where also there's conversation that happens. So in the past, where it might have been more like, I feel like, drop everything and read sometimes, is the time that kids get to read on their own. But oh my goodness, the time that they get to share what it is they read. And so back to Haley's comment about intentional, I feel like being more intentional about conversation and really, really connecting, helping kids connect with what they're reading, but also with you in what they're reading, might be more important than ever right now, because it helps them feel heard. It helps them see how important it is that they're doing this exploring and imagining. And so that just strikes me right now as something, when we're talking about intentionality, might be important.
And thank you. And I would also encourage the directors and instructors to pass that along to the parents for those who are at home and engaging the child. In the PowerPoint, it talks about some accountability, so that sharing and reporting back and encouraging the parents to be engaged in that process as well. Our closing, whip around. One word, a phrase, or a sentence that describes literacy centers or spaces for you, a word, phrase, or sentence. I meant to also put in there that resonates for you, sort of a takeaway from really deliberately talking and being intentional about creating literacy centers. I'll throw it to people because this will be our last interaction. And so just be ready. China. Yes.
So one word that I would say resonates with me as far as everything we've learned is definitely intentional and space, or that's 2 words, but
you can have
a large space here, a pretty large library, and just thinking about the way that we can set it up so that it is more comfortable for the students, so that they are more engaged, not only with the idea of reading, because when you walk into a library, you think about reading, but the actual action of it and actually being engaged and being interested in exploring everything that we have down there.
Thank you. Ms. Perry, a word, phrase, or sentence that resonates with you.
Connecting and intentional.
Thank you. Stephanie.
I'm with Miss Perry. It was connection and intentional.
Jamil.
I did put mine in the chat, and it was intentional.
Thank you. I'm double. I'm trying to do both of them, but thank you, Jamil. Francesca.
Definitely intentional again, but maybe also organized, imaginative, things that encourage the desire to want to read and get creative.
Thank you. Elise.
I think that the connection thing is connecting with me, and the idea of like cozy intimacy has been something that I've been really thinking about this time.
Appreciate it. Haley.
Safe, and China just reminded me I liked the word comfort a lot too, because the last few months have probably been really uncomfortable and felt unsafe for our campers, and what a cool opportunity we have to make it a comfortable, safe place for them again to learn and to interact with others.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Maihan.
My 2 words are mind spaces and cozy places. Hey, those rhymes.
All right. Alinisha.
Inviting, individualized, and comfortable.
We'll take all those. Samantha.
Choice.
Choice. Avery.
Imagination, giving the campus opportunity to use their imaginations and have fun, and then give them opportunities to learn about things that they aren't getting or they haven't learned.
Okay, thank you. Rosalind? Rosalind?
Sharing and comfort.
Love it. See how I'm keeping everybody accountable? I'm calling on you at the end. Ramisha?
Fun, creative, innovative.
Anyone not had an opportunity to share either chat or vocally? We're towards the end. Jillian, if we could go back to the final slide, and we're gonna go do our thing. Final slide, please.
And I'll share a variety of content that is representative and imaginative.
Thank you.
And I'll share you on the chat. Jeremy said creative, shared, exclamation point. And Cangela said calming creativity.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. So everybody, I'd like to say thank you very much for participating in literacy centers and spaces. I can be reached at zeb@kidsmart.org. We will have this webinar prepared for you and the PowerPoint, and have a great rest of the afternoon, evening. Thanks, everybody.